In June 2024 I took the ferry from England to Dunkirk. Dunkirk is on the Belgian-France border and a place where triumph eludes disaster. I was headed for the Ardennes, near the same border and where the Battle of the Bulge told a similar story. It was the surprise attack through the Ardennes that won the Battle of France in 1940, and here at the Wolf's Ravine that Hitler contemplated victory. Known as Brûlés de Pêche to the locals, who were kicked out while Hitler and his staff drew up the French surrender terms that were translated in this church. Hitler was only here for a few weeks in June 1940, but no lair is complete without a bunker, so the Nazis built this. It is a tribute to Teutonic thoroughness. Hitler never used it except perhaps to park his bike, but it had split doors in case they were partially blocked by rubble, which enclosed metres thick walls. The bunker was built by Fritz Tott's organisation. Having laid all this concrete to protect Hitler, Tott felt secure enough to criticise the war. Shortly after this, Tott died in a plane crash. Strange how often falling out with a dictator often leads to falling out of the air. The bunker was camouflaged and built deep in a forest south of Chimay. The Allies probably never knew it was there. This rather more apparent concrete protection was laid down by nature around 350 million years ago as Carboniferous limestone. It guards the river Meuse at Dinant, and the Meuse guards Belgium from attack through the Ardennes from the adjacent Eifel Mountains in Germany. The Eifel and the Ardennes are essentially the same mountain range that runs southwest from the German-speaking Eifel to the French-speaking Ardennes and is bounded there by the Meuse. This is the de Gaulle Bridge at Dinant. De Gaulle was wounded here in World War I, although not in the hand. The Germans managed to cross eventually, but the fighting was so intense that they accused the civilians of sabotage and massacred hundreds of them. The strategic importance of the Dinant bridges has meant that a fort has been on this site for 1,000 years. The current citadel was built in 1815 and is one of 4 Meuse citadels. The river defences have not been a total success. Following the World War I defeat, Rommel crossed here in 1940 and slightly further north at Hoo. However, during the 1944 Battle of the Bulge, Dinant was as far as the Germans got. British soldiers caught one of Otto Scarenzi's SS sabotage groups, posing as Americans. This tank at Blaymont on the Meuse is also pretending to be American. It is a genuine tribute to the US Army's 60th Infantry Regiment who fought the 2nd SS Panzer here in September 44. However, it is really a British Firefly with a US 75mm gun. It was knocked out by an 88mm that penetrated here and killed all of its crew. Now we get to the battle that is loosely based on a couple of popular TV drama episodes. Seriously though, there are lots of myths surrounding Bastogne and the Battle of the Bulge, but none of them explain why it is the end of the Liberty Road. This is the last road marker, with number 1 being at Utah Beach. I suspect that General Patton may have something to do with it. I believe this eagle is depicted as in the act of screaming, probably also something about General Patton, whose own myth has traduced these brave and skillful soldiers. Behind it sits the 5-star Battle of the Bulge monument. It is a premium and fitting tribute, and on the star and its points are engraved 48 states. Hawaii and Alaska hadn't reached statehood when the monument was designed. Adding a 6th point wasn't considered appropriate. There is also a memorial to the Belgian soldiers who have fought and died for their town. Where would World War II be without Band of Brothers? Wasting away in the minds of veterans and experts. Now it's real because it's been on cable TV. As this board points out, the sufferings of the real soldiers around here have been completely validated by Easy Company and digital television. So valid that now you have to pay to enter the woods that the original 101 Airborne got into for free. Charging Germans meant something else then. Fortunately for those of us who are minded towards real history, signs of actual human heroism can be found in Bois. The History Channel version of the fighting at Bastogne has the 101 being rescued by General Patton and his tanks. The paratroopers who manned these foxholes saw it rather differently. They were surrounded, but paratroopers often are. These were first-class soldiers up against mostly Volkssturm units. They had armoured and artillery support, and so were confident that they could handle anything the Germans threw at them from their lines beyond these trees. The fighting, for example, around this disused railway line and the adjacent railway station was intense, but the paratroopers were well trained, well motivated, and by no means desperate for rescue. What did cause them concern were the casualties, many of whom were treated in this church, but couldn't be evacuated out to hospitals. But supplies and ammunition were airdropped successfully once the skies had cleared. It was therefore a relief to the wounded when Patton's Third Army tanks arrived to break the siege of Bastogne, but for those in combat, life actually became much harder. When the Germans launched their Ardennes offensive, or Watch on the Rhine as they deceptively called it, their objective was to cross the Meuse and then turn northwest towards Brussels and Antwerp. But that line of advance was stopped dead by the very well handled US artillery dug in on the Elsenborn Ridge. This pushed the main line of advance south towards Dinant. Bastogne was on the Germans' nice to have list as it was a road junction, but when they met with the US resistance there, they decided to go around Bastogne and lay siege. But when the main line of advance moved south because of the resistance on the Elsenborn Ridge, the Germans really needed to get rid of the Bastogne roadblock. Patton's tanks were already in town by then. Their arrival was largely thanks to Patton's extremely able intelligence officer, Oscar Koch, who had persuaded Patton that there were signs that the Germans were planning something in the Ardennes. Eisenhower later ordered Patton to abandon his own rather futile advance and help to attack the Bulge and relieve the defenders of Bastogne, thus underlining the wisdom of General Macaulay's famous riposte. So the Anglo-American forces under Montgomery from the north and the Americans under Patton from the south pushed these bastards back. The Battle of the Bulge ended when the northern and southern prongs met here at Houfflers. The Ardennes is a beautiful place with a violent history. The violence is not over. The Ardennes Eiffel Massif is volcanically active. The magma chamber beneath it is filling. Violence will visit the Ardennes again.